What is up, guys? We got a comparison of the LG V50 and the Poco X3 Pro. Be sure to list the videos that you want to see in the comments down below. I'm doing videos on this phone all week. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Kind of an odd comparison, but I do see where you're coming from when you actually look at the specs. So the V50 will cost you around 300 bucks, and then you have the Poco NFC will also cost you around 300 bucks. This one is like slightly more expensive at around like 325. You can find this one, refurbished for around just 300 flat actually. So hardware wise, so I think the V50 is just a much better looking device than the X3 Pro for sure. It's a glass and metal device. This phone it has a plastic back, so you don't get that premium feeling like you do on the V50. So hardware wise, I think when people look at both of these phones and you say which one is a more expensive one and which was the more better looking one, they're gonna go with the V50 almost 100% of the time. I feel like definitely because you have the completely flat camera design, which sort of gives it a more elegant look, and then on the Poco you have a really bold kind of pops out camera module design on here. So I think for hardware wise, pretty easy win for the V50 here. And also it's a little bit shorter than the Poco, and it looks like the Poco is a little bit thicker as well, but there is a good reason for that. Going over the hardware on both phones, power button, in-display fingerprint, not in-display, but physical fingerprint scanner on the Poco X3 Pro. Absolutely love that move. Volume rocker right here. On the sides, on the V50, you have a Google Assistant button, volume rockers. Down below, both phones have a headphone jack. The V50 has a quad deck, so you're gonna get way superior audio on the V50. You also have USB Type-C, of course, and stereo speakers on both phones. Which phone has the better display, the Poco X3 or the LG V50? This is not a simple answer. Let me turn this down. This is not a simple answer. So the V50 has a 6.4-inch POLED display, and it is a 1440p display as well. It's 538 for the PPI. You have a notch up top. And the Poco X3 has an IPS display at 6.67 inches, so it's a little bit bigger display. 120 Hz, 1080p, 395 for the PPI. So here are the trade-offs with both displays. The overall image quality and color of the V50 is much better than the Poco X3's display. Colors look more vibrant, icons and everything look extremely sharp on the V50. But you do have a much bigger notch as opposed to on the Poco with the punch hole. The Poco does have a 120 Hz refresh rate. Basically what that means is when you're scrolling and swiping and just doing anything on your phone on the Poco, it just feels way smoother on this phone than on the 60 Hz refresh rate on the V50. So if that's something that concerns you, then that's the decision you're gonna have to make. I can't really tell you which display is gonna be better because they both have their benefits, their pros and cons. Me personally, I like the V50's display a little bit more. I could deal with it. I mean, at this price point, I could deal with not having a high refresh rate at this price point for the 1440p display. This is only for people that watch a lot of videos. If you do not watch a lot of high-res videos on your phone, then you don't really need the 1440p display. I think you'll be happier with this 120 Hz refresh rate, the scrolling. You can take advantage of the 120 Hz when you're gaming as well. Again, that is 100% up to you. But yeah, I do think the overall panel on the V50 is much better. But again, you have to base it off those pros and cons. Alright, so let's talk about the specs a little bit more. On the V50, we're running Android 10, and it's compatible with Android 11, but this is Sprint version, so we're never getting it. You do have the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640, micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. On the X3 Pro, we have Android 11, MIUI 12, and then we have the Snapdragon 860, and then micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM as well. So basically, you can see processor-wise, you're pretty much getting the same speeds as you can see. Not a huge difference. You can see the Poco came out on the single core, and then the V50 came out on the multi-core somehow. When it comes to speed, let's just do a real world comparison. I pretty much think these phones are going to be tied. The 860 versus the 855 is not a big jump up, as you can see. I don't believe that you're going to notice a significant difference. And even when these phones age, as you can see, they're still going to perform the exact same. So if you're concerned about speed, there really is no real thing here. I think the Poco will come out sometimes faster, but they're usually like tied. So you can see now the V50 is coming out, so they're bouncing back and forth. Now, if it feels like I'm touching the Poco first, I'm not. It's because 120 hertz. And yeah, so as you guys can see, there's no actual real difference with speed here. And the same goes for gaming as well. These phones are going to be excellent for gaming. You can still play games on high, Call of Duty, PUBG, games like that. You will be able to play on high settings. But as far as, I've been playing with these phones for a minute, and they honestly are kind of on track with speed. Sometimes the V50 will be slower, and then sometimes the V50 will beat the Poco. So, again, speed quality is going to be great on both of these phones. Both of these phones have stereo speakers, so let's go ahead and see which one sounds the best. I got them both at max volume, starting with the V50. The Poco is way louder. I'm actually surprised. It's way louder and thumpier and has better bass quality. That's a huge difference, actually. Your additional features and stuff like that. These phones, the Poco does have a screen recording on here. Dark mode is on here. Your Mi remote is on here as well. On the V50, screen recording is on here. Screen sharing is actually on here as well. The Hi-Fi quad DAC. So they both have a lot of great features. But I want to talk about getting into the phone. So the fingerprint scanner is on the back. It's physical. They're both physical. So they both are very fast. I personally prefer the one on the side. And this is completely up to you which one you prefer. But I just like having it on the power button. I think that's the best way. They both have face unlock as well. So as far as that goes, they both work fine, and they're both very fast as far as getting into your device. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about image quality on both of these guys. So starting off with the V50. The V50 has a 12 megapixel standard camera, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide, 4K video, 8 megapixel selfie camera, and then you actually have a second camera for wide angle selfies at 5 megapixels. I'm gonna let you know right off the bat, I prefer the V50's pictures. I think the V50 has a slightly better camera than the Poco X3 Pro. I just preferred how colors came out, how, just the overall shots with dynamic range. Just the overall quality of the photos just seemed better to me on the V50. So that is not to knock the Poco X3 Pro. The cameras are pretty good on here as well, and you do get a macro lens, which you don't get on the V50, which I always think is fun to play with. But it's a quad camera setup, 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro and depth sensor. You also have 4K video and a 20 megapixel selfie, shoots in 1080p for that front facing camera. And again, like I said, the Poco phone cameras are good, but I do prefer the V50's cameras there. But I think you'll be perfectly happy with both. They both have good pro modes, and they both take great shots. But again, if I had to pick a winner, the V50 I would definitely pick there. All right, so this is where the Poco shines. So you do have on the Poco a massive 5,160 milliamp battery, 33 watt fast charging. Now, the trade-off here is that on the V50, you have a 4,000 milliamp battery, much smaller, and then slower charging speeds at 18 watts. But you do have wireless charging on the V50 as well, which is something that I really like. It's very convenient. That is completely up to you, but the better battery life phone is going to be the Poco X3. If you're somebody that really needs a phone that's going to give you excellent battery life, this is definitely going to be the better choice here. But remember, you're missing out on wireless charging as well. The V50 has great battery life, but it's not as good as the Pocos. So that's pretty much it. Just to sum it all up, hardware, the V50, as far as, you know, the additional features, I think the quad DAC is a thing to consider as well if you in audio. Display, V50. As far as speed, the Poco for the most part is slightly faster, but I really wouldn't count that as a win. I think it's more of a draw there, but it is slightly faster to me opening applications from time to time. And also cameras, the V50 to me takes better photos. But again, the V50 is on a 2 to 3 year life cycle. So with the Poco, you should be getting updates for honestly that same amount of time, because I think budget phones don't get the same love as flagship phones, and the updates are really slow on budget phones or mid-range phones. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. That sums it up, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.